Hey, welcome to Clicks and Quesadillas. This is your host, Jason. This is my guest, Pastor David. David,
Hello.
thanks. Thanks so much for letting me talk to you. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I've known Pastor David for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I first met him as a youth pastor at a church that I would frequently visit.
Yeah.
And
That was fun.
eventually he became a pastor, and at one time I went to a church of his for like, you know, consistently as a member.
Yeah.
And I'm not part of his church right now, but I still value you as like somebody I can come to and be like, hey man, I got a problem. Can you help me figure this out? I mean, I appreciate. Thanks, David, for being part of my life.
Here for you, bro.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So my channel's name is Clicks and Quesadillas. It's based off a game I play called Hero Clicks. It's mostly based on superheroes. It's a superhero thing. So it's like a little miniature thing. You play against somebody else. That's kind of it.
Yeah, don't know much about video game. I think I missed that.
Not
kind
a
of
video
my
game.
generation, you know.
But it's just a board game thing.
Oh, it's a board. Oh,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but I like the title though, Jason. I do.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
It's catchy,
yeah, it's
right?
catchy.
Clicks and Quesadillas.
Yeah. Who doesn't like to click?
Yeah.
Right. And who doesn't like quesadillas?
I'm going to ask you some questions now. What's your favorite superhero movie?
Oh gosh, not a superhero guy.
Yeah.
But I did see, well, growing up, Batman.
Yeah.
I guess I'll say it that way. When I was a kid, Batman was on TV. Like, we got two channels. I'm from South Florida, the North Palm Beach, Jupiter, Juno Beach area. We got two channels. We got ABC and NBC.
Yeah.
Couldn't get CBS. That was out of Miami. And so, I mean, that was it. But there was a TV show on in the 60s called Batman. You know, some people have seen it where, you know, they throw the punches and the little caption comes up, bam, pow, and all that, and Robin and all that. So Batman was always kind of my guy, you know.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, there's
Quick question. Do you remember have you ever seen the 90s, the Batman cartoon that came out?
no.
Okay. Who's the Batman that played in the one you
Oh
watched?
gosh, is Bruce Wayne his name?
That's the comic character.
That's the character's name? I don't remember. And he died just
Ward?
like a few years ago. I don't think so.
He
We'll
did.
Google it, Jason. Nowadays they have something called Google.
Well, that's
Any
my phone.
question you
I
have.
can't do it right now. But the guy who played the Batman, he
Yeah.
did a voice for one of the characters on the 90s cartoon. So I was just gonna bring that up.
So isn't there a superhero called Iron Man? Is that the name of it?
There is, yeah.
Love that. Tony Stark? Right?
Yeah. Hey, look
Bam,
at you.
there we go.
Look at you.
Yeah, love that. I saw, I think 1 and 2, and I don't know, maybe there's like 100 more.
Of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Liked it a lot. I like his whole thing, and you know, Gwyneth Paltrow, whoever it is that's on there with
yeah,
it.
that's
That's good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I watch all of them. Not all of them are ones that I'm like, oh yeah, I could watch that again. I mean, most of them are like, well, that was good.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm
right.
going to watch it again. I would recommend the first 2 Captain America movies. I think
Okay.
those are excellent. I've watched them through like several times. Those are probably my favorite.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Were you going to say anything else about like favorite superhero, and then you were talking about Batman?
Like Batman, yeah. I thought he was.
So that would be your favorite
Yeah,
hero?
that's my
That's my
favorite
next
superhero.
question. A lot of people like Batman. Batman's, who doesn't like Batman,
Now, here's
right?
the thing. This is going to be controversial,
Yeah.
but I do not think Batman can beat up Superman.
Okay.
Well, you know, people always want to argue about that. I've heard people get into huge arguments. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Superman can do.
Yeah,
It's much more powerful.
Definitely. Batman would
Batman's smart
definitely.
with gadgets and all that. I get it, but
Yeah.
but Superman would make mincemeat out of him. I think. So that's my opinion. Don't write me. Don't judge me.
So would you say you're a child of the 60s?
Yeah, 70s probably
60s,
more. I was
70s,
born
okay.
in 61.
Oh, okay.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I saw a lot went down in the 60s and 70s, but you know, I mean, like 1970, I was 9.
Yeah.
You know, 1980, I was 19.
I
So
gotcha.
the 70s is kind of, you know, all that, you know, music and culture and everything that was going on. Yeah, I'd say I'm more of a child of the 70s, 60s, 70s, whatever. But yeah.
Do you know, like, how did people perceive comic books in those days? It's not as popular as these days, but I mean, it's.
Don't
so
know.
it's like,
I wasn't
yeah.
into any of that. I was never really into comic books. I remember there was a magazine. Gosh, it was called Mad.
Yeah.
It was a Mad magazine or something.
Yeah.
Everybody was into that. That I know and that I remember. I wasn't really, and yeah, wasn't ever much of a reader, you know, or comic books. I was outside a lot. I grew up, like I said, in South Florida on the water.
Oh yeah.
And so every day we were outside. You know, there were so many creatures and fish and different types of crabs and sea life and manatees and alligators and you know,
Yeah.
saltwater, freshwater. I mean, just everything going on. And so it was like a wilderness. And so from the time we got home from school, we were gone. We were out, you
Yeah.
know, doing all of that. So, and with 2 channels on TV and not being much of a reader.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, just kind of. I sound boring.
Well, I mean, it's a lot different from kids these days. I mean, they have a lot of video games. So I mean, a lot of them are probably like inside most of the days, and like, I mean, me and the boy Derek will walk outside. I mean, there's a bunch of kids who live in the neighborhood. But we walk outside, go play out here or something like that. But like, we don't really see them.
Yeah.
They're inside.
Yeah.
They got stuff to do inside. Oh well. It's a different world.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember any comic books. Not weird.
It's also probably different in the fact that, I mean, when I was a kid, hey mom, I'm gonna go to Billy's house and play with him. But like these days, I mean, do you let your kid go and walk to Billy's house? So it's a different world in that aspect too, right?
Right. Yeah. They're not so readily accessible either. I mean, you know, we had a convenience store that was about a mile and a half, 2 miles from my house, but that was it. They didn't have comic books. Where are you going to buy them?
No, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's where I bought my first
mail
comic
order.
books.
I mean, you get them in the mail, snail mail. You know what I mean? So it's not like there's no Walmart, there's no Kmart, there's no, you know, whatever, Target. So, different world, man.
Yeah. So,
Everything now is at the fingertips.
Oh yeah,
It's pretty
everything.
cool.
Everything.
It's pretty cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, like the Batman, name of the Batman. Hey, so you're a pastor.
Yeah.
So you're a Christian.
Yes.
How did you become a Christian?
Wow. That's
How's that?
you know, I think everybody who's a Christian has a pretty amazing story. I mean, some people are like, well, I grew up in the church and I always believed it, you know, and have kind of a boring testimony. Some people will say that. I think that's kind of the best testimony. I've always known God. You know, my parents raised me as a
like
Christian. You know what I mean?
Thing.
Yeah. Because the years that you're not a Christian they're not wasted. I mean, nothing's wasted in this world and God's world, but it's wasted in the sense you spend time where you don't know God. You know, and that's a scary place to be because I've known both. I've had a contrast. So for me, I grew up an atheist. I just never, nobody I knew went to church, nobody I knew had a relationship with God. I didn't know any Christians. If I did know Christians growing up, I didn't know they were Christians. So I just, God was not a thing. I didn't consider him or think about him or too much of any of that. And then when I got, you know, kind of, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, whatever it was, they started talking about evolution. I'm like, oh, that's how the world got here. It just happened, you know, through chance mutations.
Right.
And so that was kind of, and then you die, and then you don't exist anymore. And that used to terrify me. I used to contemplate non-existence. I used to think about, like, no more David, you know? And it would put me in the grips of despair. It would put me in terror. I mean, literally. Like, I almost couldn't think about it, but I wanted to keep thinking about it because it was something I thought, I don't know, I needed to consider. And so, yeah, I had met this kid who moved to my neighborhood when I was 12. He was from New York. And if people that know the South Florida culture, at least where I was from, it was kind of like more of a rural, kind of like a redneck area. You know what I mean? And people from New York, and he was from like the Bronx or something.
Okay.
Or Queens, or whatever. And he, first day I met him, he said, "Get off my grass, you monstrosity." I was like, "Who are you? Why do you talk that way? And what's a monstrosity?" I just. But we ended up becoming close friends, and eventually, and he said, "I'm an atheist." And I said, "Oh, what is that? I don't know what that is." He goes, "Well, I don't believe there's a God." And I said, "Oh, I'm an atheist too." Yeah. I'm an atheist. And so, I kind of lived that way. I partied all through high school. Didn't think there was a God. I just wanted to drink and smoke weed. And back then, cocaine was powder cocaine. People weren't smoking crack, so I would do that recreationally on the weekends. And just lived kind of for girls. Had a new girlfriend every couple months, and just didn't care really about God or anything else. Just wanted to party. And I met this one girl, and beautiful girl from Alabama, and ended up getting her pregnant. And she was like, another accent, "You gotta marry me." I was like, I was 20 years old. I'm like, "I'm not marrying you. I'm not getting married. Like, we could live together, see what happens, but I'm not gonna marry you." Her dad actually threatened to kill me if I didn't marry her.
Wow.
So I ended up marrying her. It wasn't because I was afraid of her dad or anything. It was actually my great grandma. It was like, you got to do the right thing. So I married her, and then when our daughter, who Dana, got to be about 4 or 5 years old, my wife at the time, who's since passed away, but at the time, Patty started saying to me, we got to go to church. We got a little girl, we got to go to church. And I was like, "Church? Those people are nutso. They're Looney Tunes." If anybody ever said Jesus to me, I was like, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I just thought they had a screw loose. I thought they were simpletons. I thought they were, stupid. I thought they believed the book of fables. The Bible was a book of fables. I thought they were weak. I thought that, this was just a crutch for them. I'm not getting anywhere near those people, And they're freaks. And so I said, "Look, you can go. You can go to church." But now, by this time, I'm 26 years old. I'm like, you go to church, I'm not going. And so she started going. My wife at the time started going with Dana. And by this time, we had a little boy, Corey, who was like 1. She started taking him to church. And then, it's hard for me to maintain my composure when I talk. Little Dana started saying, "Why don't you go to church with us, Daddy?" And usually Sunday mornings I was hungover, kind of couldn't drink the night before, and then I was just waiting for the Dolphin game, Miami Dolphins, to come on at 1 o'clock because I'm a huge Dolphins fan. And that was my Sunday, so I was like, "Oh gosh, okay, I'll go." And so I went. I started going to church, and I was looking around at the people, and I'm like, "There's Ed Easy, and he's the president of Palm Beach Community College. Well, there's Jack Nicklaus." I grew up with the Nicklauses. And I saw Jack Nicklaus, Barbara Nicklaus there, the golfer. Jack Nicklaus is smart. And then I saw Pratt Whitney, the vice president of Pratt Whitney, which is a huge defense contractor, was there. I saw my insurance agent. I was like, "These are the smart people in town. These aren't stupid people." And then I started hearing about Christ. I started hearing about God, and that you could know Him and have a relationship with Him, and that you could have eternal life through a relationship with Him. And so for me, for someone who was an atheist and someone who was terrified to die, to hear about that, to hear that good news, it was really good news for me. And I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. And if there is, if this is true, if there's any chance, if there's 1/10 of 1% or 1/100000th of percent of chance that this is real, then I should investigate it. And then people were telling me, "Well, look, you can know God. Just ask Him to reveal Himself. Ask Him to come into your life. Ask Jesus to come into your heart." The whole thing. Ask Jesus in your heart. I was like, okay, So I would lay on my, oh man, I would lay on my pillow at night, you know, in bed. It's dark, lights out, wife asleep. God, if what they're saying is true, it's very hard for me, okay, to say this.
Yeah.
Then I want to know you. I want to have a relationship with you. You know, Jesus, come into my heart. Jesus, come into my life. If there's any chance that this is true, God, and that you exist, then I want to know you. I want this. And I did that probably for like a week or two. And then it was like I tell people this, it was like I was in a pitch black room. Pitch black. I couldn't see anything. Didn't know what was in the room. And someone walked in and flipped on a light switch. And it was just like, I mean, it was literally, I was blind. And now I see. Just like the blind man. They're like, tell us about Jesus. Is he a sinner? Who did this to you? What's his name? He goes, you know, is he a sinner? Remember the Pharisees questioning, and he said, well, there's a sinner or not, I don't know. All I know is I was blind, and now I see. And that's kind of where I was at, you know, and then started investigating the Bible.
Right. Did you guys get that? Like, there in the Bible, there's a story about this blind guy, and Jesus healed him, but this blind guy didn't know who it was that healed him, because Jesus went away, and the blind guy, who's not blind anymore, went about his business, and you know he's probably pretty excited. But like the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they're like they were mad at him because it was like the Sabbath, right? Because it was the Sabbath, and hey, who healed you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, they wanted to stop Jesus because he was getting too popular.
Yeah.
The blind man eventually saw Jesus in the temple, and you know, then he knew who he was and all of that. But that's what happened to me, you know. And then I started investigating the Bible, and you know, because people were saying it's the Word of God, inerrant and infallible. It doesn't contain errors. It can't fail. It's actually God's Word. It's not a book written by men. It's not fables. These things actually happen. They're actually miracles that God did, and all of that. And when I started investigating that, reading about that, looking into that, I realized that the Bible was not a book of fables, but it really was the Word of God. It really was perfect, and it really was inerrant and infallible, and all of those things. And at the time, I was working for Quicksilver, you know, the surf company, and Roxy, their junior line. And so I was a rep in Florida, traveling rep, going to all the surf shops, salesman. And but anyway, so at the church they said, "Oh, you're cool. Like you work for Quicksilver. Will you teach our youth?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about the Bible. Oh, don't worry. We'll give you a sheet that you follow and you read from it, and then you'll read the Bible stories. And I was like, okay. So that's how I kind of started with youth. And then some guys were like, hey, we're going to the maximum security prison, Belglade Correctional Institution, which is a maximum security prison where they were doing prison ministry. Oh, come with us, you know, and speak to the prisoners. I'm like, okay. Oh, give your testimony. You had a radical conversion. Give your testimony up in front of the church. I'm like, okay. And the next thing I started hearing was, you know, you should be a pastor. And that's what I did. I'm like, oh, no. You have no idea about the things that I've done and the person that I was, and, you know, all the sins I committed, and I did drugs and drank and, you know, had premarital sex and all of those things, and you know, I'm not holy enough. And then, you know, I came to realize, well, none of us are. You know, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
You know, that we can't get to heaven by our behavior. This is the whole point of church, that Christ died for us in our place. You know, and so I started investigating seminaries. I had my bachelor's degree from Florida Atlantic University, and so. Reformed Theological Seminary is here in Orlando, and that's why I moved here in '92, and just never left. Loved Central Florida, and you know, got the job at Pine Ridge Church over there on Hiawassee Road, which is where I met you, and eventually started my own church and all of that. And my wife passed away in '09, and I got remarried in 2011 to Katrina, and we started a church in downtown Winter Garden, Emmaus Church. Meets at the Garden Theater. Sundays at 10 a.m. Great church, cool pastor. You love it. So,
Yeah, I like the pastor there.
Yeah,
He's all right.
He's all right.
Good guy.
So we're in Quicksilver. Oh, Volcom. Still one in the surf stuff. So that, I guess that's kind of a long answer to your question about, you know, how I became a Christian, but I lived for 26 years without knowing Christ. And I've lived now for 31 years with knowing Christ.
You passed the years.
Yeah. So, what a difference. You know, and everybody was kind of shocked when I left the surf industry because it's very, very lucrative. It's the coolest job. You can, I mean, you're wearing shorts and t-shirts and traveling around to surf shops and making, you know, well over 6 figures. And I left that to go into the ministry. You know? But you know, when God calls you into the ministry, there ain't nothing you can do about it. You got to go.
It's good. It's good.
So, yeah.
Thanks, David. All right, so I think you answered my question. It's good. It's great. I think you answered my next question, which was like, how did you become a pastor? So, but you kind of like already did that. But so did you go to Pine Ridge to into youth ministry with the expectation that you were going to end up being a pastor?
Yes. I mean, you know, I was going to seminary, and you know, when I started looking into theology, there's a lot of different theological camps. That's the thing, you know, I thought all Christians believe the same thing. There are different ways and nuances with theology and ways to understand and interpret the Bible. And so that's why I ended up going to Reformed Theological Seminary. I thought they were, the Reformed guys were super sharp, you know, John Calvin and Luther and Spurgeon and, you know, others. I was like, and these guys, R.C. Sproul, kind of modern day, Tim Keller. I was like, you know, they seem like they're super sharp when it comes to theology, and it was very historical. So I wanted to go to that seminary. I'm not a theological snob. I mean, there are different camps and different ways of understanding the Bible and all of that, you know, but I thought for me that was where I was super comfortable. So I looked up in the phone book to find a church and a denomination that saw the Bible that way, and I ended up in the PCA, Presbyterian Church in America, which is what Pine Ridge was. So I looked for a church that, you know, had that theology, and the cool thing was I had moved to Windermere when I moved up here.
It's really close.
Because it was, yeah. So I just looked in the phone book. Some of you don't know what a phone book is, but looked in the phone book, and that church was there on Hiawassee. And so I showed up and started worshiping there, and then they needed a youth guy. I was in seminary, so they hired me, and then I stayed there for 14 years. It was youth, and then eventually associate pastor, and then left to come to Winter Garden to plant my own church, Avalon Presbyterian Church. But now Emmaus Church is a non-denominational church.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not in the PC. I'm not in that denomination anymore. The Presbyterian Church in America. Yeah. So, that's how I ended up at Pine Ridge. Phone book.
Huh. That's crazy.
And I ran into Pastor Bill over there, and was he sharp? Yeah. So for 2 years, he met with me every Tuesday morning at like 7 a.m. for 2 or 3 hours, because I was reading through the Bible, and I had legal pads full of questions. And that guy's so well educated, so smart, and he spent those hours upon hours upon hours upon hours with me. And you know, as I was in seminary, and as I was at church getting experience, you know, and at the same time teaching youth, preaching, and doing snowboard trips, and, you know, whitewater rafting trips.
Oh, yeah.
So having a blast, learning theology, it was a great time. You know, yeah.
Let me ask you about. So what were you doing today? Huh?
Well, today I had a breakfast meeting with a friend of mine. He's an elder at a local church, a Mosaic church here.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine. And I had breakfast together. Then I went over to the abortion clinic, Orlando Women's Center, to talk to the women going in there about alternatives, true choice. They have choices. They don't have to take the life of their baby. I go there every Friday. I used to go on Wednesdays because Wednesdays is late term day, because in Florida you can have an abortion up to 6 months, pregnant up to 24 weeks. So a lot of these women think they have no alternatives or no hope, or they don't have resources and things that they need to help them with their pregnancy. So Choices Women's Clinic is a crisis pregnancy center that I'm involved with, and they will help them. 3D ultrasound, they have nurses, doctors, they have everything that you need there, and can help the women with rent, with medical bills, power bill, phone bill. I mean, whatever. They do everything. Or adoption, if that's what the
situation calls for.
Yeah. So there's parent, there's adoption, and there's abortion. So there are choices. So we're just asking them to consider maybe the other choices. And so thousands upon thousands of babies are alive today because of this ministry.
Oh yeah.
And this morning, 3 women, and my friend's still there, but 3 women chose life, and they come back with those babies. This is little William, this is little Becky. I was here and I was going to abort her, and you talked to me and helped me and thank you, and it's incredible. So yeah.
That sounds pretty amazing to see the baby come back, or the mom come back with the baby. And
it's heavy over there. It's heavy, but anybody wants to come, it's a great ministry. Frontline stuff, we're not yelling at people or anything like that. We're just loving people, telling them that there's other ways. So, and a lot of people say, I was hoping someone would talk to me. I was hoping God would put someone in my way. I was hoping someone would tell me that I don't have to do this. So a lot of times the boyfriend or whatever's there trying to push the girl to abort, because then he doesn't have to
the responsibility
for the child, or child support, or things like that. She doesn't really want to be there. So sometimes they get mad when you're like, hey, maybe you should keep the kid.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. What are your questions?
That's fine. I was done with that.
What happens when you interview people outside? A paperweight. Pray big.
Yeah. Thanks, David. So yeah, I think I'll end. Do you want to talk about anything else? Do you want to say anything else before I close the?
No, I think that's it. Just a little bit about me and my life. I appreciate the interview. Hopefully, hey Monica, how are you?
Hey Monica.
Some pretty girl just walked out of the house.
Look, we have quesadillas.
Oh wow!
Clicks
and quesadillas. Wow.
Thanks, Monica.
You're welcome, guys.
Made by someone from Mexico, so they're good. So is this, like those cooking shows, do we actually take a bite?
You can, you don't have to.
We take a bite and then you go, oh, that's amazing. That is delicious.
So good.
So good. Woo. You married up.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
Love you, bro.
Love you too, man. Clicks and Quesadillas, signing out. Thanks for watching.
Deuces.